Have you ever wondered what goes on when a war movie pretends to rewrite history? The Eagle Has Landed wasn't just a vintage World War II thriller. It was a wild collision of casting chaos, set location illusions, hidden agendas, and real-life headlines bleeding into fiction. Behind the polished uniform buttons and parachute jumps lay secrets, stunts, and stories even historians raise an eyebrow at. Tonight, we dig into 20 weird facts about this 1976 film you probably never heard. And I promise, the bonus fact will shock you. The unexpected final film of a Hollywood legend. It wasn't a routine war picture. It was the swan song of director John Sturges, the man behind The Great Escape and The Magnificent Seven. When production wrapped, Sturges walked away from directing, never to return. Cast members later said that while cameras rolled, Sturges was already thinking of fishing and far-off shores. That detachment turned into myth. Did the creative baton pass away before the last shot? What audiences enjoy looks polished. Behind the scenes, it feels like an auteur quietly checking out mid-mission. His absence colored the mood of the set and the pacing of the film, making the final product feel part grand war epic, part weary farewell. Casting swaps and political backlash. It wasn't just screen time decisions. It was real-world politics crashing into the studio gates. Originally, actor Richard Harris was lined up to play Liam Devlin, but his prior public support for the IRA triggered threats to the production. The part instead went to Donald Sutherland. Meanwhile, Michael Caine negotiated to switch roles. He declined Devlin and asked for Colonel Steiner. These swaps turned the film's moral compass sideways. Germans as complex characters, an IRA man as one of the protagonists. What seems like casting logistics actually reshaped the story's tone, shifting it from binary good versus evil into something murkier. Real locations playing pretend. It wasn't filmed where you think. It was an international masquerade. The village of Studley Constable, England, was largely filmed at Maple Durham in Oxfordshire. The Channel Island sequences were shot in Cornwall, and a train station in Finland passed for Poland. Even the parachute drop scene used the Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers parachute display team. These substitutions added authenticity, but also chaos. Weather delays, mismatched foliage, and local extras who weren't briefed in English. Every scenic postcard hides compromise and improvisation. What looks seamless on screen comes from shifting countries, rewired sets, and a crew racing deadlines. A novel that sold far faster than you'd expect. It wasn't just a best-selling novel. It was lightning-fast turnaround to film. Jack Higgins published The Eagle Has Landed in 1975. By late 1974, film rights were already secured by Paramount and Jack Weiner. The studio moved at breakneck speed. That kind of rapid green light is rare, especially when the protagonists are German soldiers, normally a tougher sell. This urgency carried a strange energy. The film was less adaptation matured and more hot off the press. The result is a movie that feels urgent, a little raw, as though events behind the camera match the mission on screen. Nazi soldiers. With Sympathy, it wasn't conventional war film morality. It was a daring twist. The film asks you to empathize with German paratroopers. Colonel Steiner and his men are portrayed not as fanatics, but as honor-driven soldiers trapped in collapse. That decision was unsettling in 1976. To respectfully humanize the enemy required delicate calibration. Writers inserted scenes showing Steiner rescuing a Jewish girl, then turning in a penitent, forcing audiences to question allegiances. The film didn't just show war. It showed the last gasp of belief. The weirdness is subtle. You realize you're rooting for someone after agreeing to the improbable. The moral ambiguity beneath the uniform gives the film its lingering strange power. A fake water wheel and a real disaster. It wasn't just rustic set design. It was a high-risk stunt that nearly went wrong. The scene in which a young girl falls into the pond by the village watermill required a custom-built water wheel. When one of the stuntmen jumped in, his parachute wires snagged, and the German uniform underneath got exposed in the shot. The director kept the take. The accident became the moment the villagers suspected German paratroopers. That unplanned error rewrote the scene's logic. An unplanned flaw became narrative fuel. What seems like drama is often an altered mistake embraced on the fly. The film celebrated plastic precision, but lived through liquid chaos. Mixed influences behind the script. It wasn't purely wartime intrigue. It was crossover of genres and voices. Screenwriter Tom Mankiewicz, known for his James Bond work, adapted Higgins's novel. He brought spy thriller rhythm into war epic form. During production, he reportedly called it the best script I ever wrote, but also confessed frustration at the direction. His agent claimed that the editing team saved the film. That layering of action thriller character study, and war drama gives the film its uneven charm and odd tonal shifts. Viewers feel both adrenaline and moral introspection. What you watch as streamlined story was, behind the scenes, a culture clash of styles and sensibilities. The filming budget gamble. It wasn't a low-risk production. It was a major gamble. With big actors like Caine, Sutherland, and Robert Duvall, a globe-spanning shoot, and elaborate sets, the film's budget reached around $6 million. Filming across multiple countries added cost, as did the intricate parachute sequences and period vehicles. Some budget lines train station in Finland. Plane landing sequences in Cornwall were budgetarily reckless. Yet, the gamble paid off. The film hit #1 in the UK for a week in April 1977. What looked like war film excess might well have been calculated grandiosity. The weirdness lies in how safely it succeeded despite risks stacked everywhere. A real what-if behind the fiction. It wasn't pure fantasy. It was alternate history, stitched with reality. The opening credits of the film actually include archival footage from the real 1943 Gran Sasso raid, where German paratroopers rescued Mussolini. From that point, the film asks, what if they tried Churchill next? That intentional blending gives narrative license a weird edge. You're watching fiction invade documented history. The realism adds gravity, but also unsettling possibility. Behind the what if is the echo of what might have been. The film leans weirdly into that territory, inviting audiences to wince at the comfortable assumption of Allied invincibility. The actor who fought the uniform, Michael Caine, was hesitant from the start. The idea of wearing a Nazi officer's uniform unsettled him deeply. His own father had served in the British Army during the Blitz. Caine worried veterans might view the film as glorifying the enemy. He told the costume team he would only play Colonel Steiner if they redesigned the tunic to dull the colors, remove bright insignia, and exclude the swastika armband from close-ups. Wardrobe quietly complied, bleaching metals and aging the cloth to look worn, not proud. Even so, extras sometimes saluted him between takes, which Caine found unnerving. Ironically, those subtle changes gave Steiner humanity, a soldier weary of ideology rather than driven by it. Caine's moral discomfort translated into the quiet dignity audiences felt on screen. What began as an actor's protest became a symbol of conscience, reminding viewers that war's uniforms carry weight long after the guns fall silent. It wasn't rebellion. It was empathy sewn into every stitch. The director and his star barely spoke. John Sturges was a Hollywood veteran nearing retirement. Michael Caine was a fast-rising global star. Their temperaments clashed instantly. Sturges worked methodically, insisting on rehearsals and measured blocking. Caine thrived on instinct, preferring spontaneity. Crew members recalled stretches of shooting where the two exchanged barely a word beyond action and cut. Yet the tension worked on screen. Steiner's restrained authority mirrored Caine's real irritation, his clipped dialogue reflecting that friction. When the final scene wrapped, they shook hands politely, never working together again. Caine later said, "We didn't get on, but we got it on film." That quiet feud shaped the movie's tone. Precise, yet cold. Disciplined, yet brooding. What could have been dysfunction turned into creative electricity. Sometimes, authenticity isn't cooperation. It's contained conflict, captured forever in a soldier's stare. Donald Sutherland's hair became a tissue production problem. Between reshoots, Donald Sutherland's hair developed a life of its own. Filming spanned nearly a year across multiple countries, and continuity photographs weren't always updated. One sequence shot in England shows Devlin with neatly trimmed hair. Another, filmed months later in Norway, reveals a wilder, longer look. Editors scrambled to hide the inconsistency, adding hats, adjusting lighting, or cutting quickly between angles. When eagle-eyed viewers noticed, Sutherland laughed, claiming Devlin didn't have time for a barber during the war. The mishap became an unintended metaphor, a spy who changes shape without meaning to. Continuity errors usually signal chaos, but here, they add strange realism, the passage of unseen weeks, fatigue creeping into style. It wasn't negligence. It was accidental storytelling. Sutherland's hair became a barometer of the mission's unraveling, proof that even small human details can outwit Hollywood precision. Real paratroopers doubled as extras. To stage the German parachute drop convincingly, producers hired Britain's REME parachute display team, real soldiers performing for the camera. Their professionalism impressed Sturges, but caused a problem. Every landing looked too perfect. The director wanted struggle, not textbook execution. So he told them to trip, tumble, and look terrified. The troops obliged, intentionally misjudging their drops to simulate the chaos of combat. Between takes, they joked that it was harder to land badly than to land right. The realism, you see the uneven falls, The scramble through mud is carefully orchestrated imperfection. Those authentic jumps also saved money. Fewer wires, fewer stunt doubles, more pride for the soldiers involved. The weirdest twist? Some extras were veterans of actual airborne units from World War II. They reenacted their own history in fictional uniforms, fighting for a Germany they once opposed. It wasn't reenactment, it was cinematic déjà vu. Bravery replayed through irony. The village still exists frozen in time. Maple Durham in Oxfordshire stood in for the fictional Studley Constable. And locals swear the place never recovered from 1976. The production crew built a wooden bridge, dressed cottages with false bullet holes, and left the churchyard untouched afterward because it looked too authentic to waste. To this day, tourists can trace the film's geography, almost shot for shot. The watermill pond, the lane where the convoy crashes, even the pub doorway Donald Sutherland leaned against. Residents remember extras in German uniforms marching through fog while real school children watched from hedgerows. The studio's carpenters worked with such realism that villagers later found discarded prop grenades mistaken for antiques. Maple Durham now trades gently on its cinematic ghost, hosting small tours for die-hard fans. It wasn't just a filming location, it became a time capsule. A British Hamlet, forever, half real, half movie, caught between history and imagination. A misfired blank nearly injured an actor. One explosive afternoon almost ended the movie. During the climactic firefight, a blank round discharged too close to Larry Hagman's face, peppering him with powder burns. Safety officers rushed in, halting production for hours. Hagman, ever the Joker, quipped, "If that's the worst the Germans can do, I'll take my chances." Still, the scare prompted new rules. Protective goggles between takes, restricted ranges for all gunfire. Ironically, the near accident boosted realism. Actors flinched more naturally afterward. What you see in those chaotic final scenes ducking soldiers, genuine panic, is partly adrenaline from that real danger. The bullet never drew blood, but it left a mark on the film's tone. Tension edged with authenticity. It wasn't scripted peril, it was the unpredictable heartbeat of filmmaking, when illusion and hazard become indistinguishable. Larry Hagman's deleted heroics. Larry Hagman thought The Eagle Has Landed would be his leap from television fame to big-screen stardom. His character, Colonel Pitts, was written as a comic tragic foil, a blustering officer who redeems himself in a daring nighttime rescue. Sturgis even filmed elaborate action sequences, explosions, a convoy ambush, and a tense standoff that showed Pitts' courage. But when editors tested the rough cut, audiences grew restless. The subplot slowed the German storyline. So Sturgis reluctantly cut 40 minutes, almost all of Hagman's arc. Overnight, a co-lead became a cameo. Hagman reportedly laughed, saying, "I died in the cutting room before I ever hit the screen." Those trimmed reels remain unseen in storage. Their negatives marked Pitts deleted. The absence creates strange narrative gaps. Characters reference Pitts' plan, though viewers never see it unfold. It wasn't careless editing. It was creative triage. Sturgis saved the film's rhythm by amputating an entire limb, proving that in cinema, survival often means sacrifice. A dog that wouldn't stop barking. Nothing disrupted filming like the German Shepherd nicknamed Max, borrowed from a local farmer. In rehearsal, Max obeyed perfectly. The moment blanks fired, he lost discipline, bolting through takes, barking over dialogue, or lunging at actors' boots. Trainers bribed him with sausages and praise, but each gunshot triggered chaos anew. The production tried recording his reactions for background realism, only to realize Max drowned out the microphones. Sturgis finally ordered, "Keep rolling. If he barks, it's war." That defiance turned nuisance into atmosphere. When Steiner's men crouch in the village square, Max barks faintly off-screen. The sound wasn't Foley. It was frustration captured live. Cast members joked that he was the only actor who never missed a cue. After filming, the villagers kept him as a local celebrity. It wasn't controlled filmmaking. It was documentary instinct, turning distraction into texture, letting one stubborn dog remind everyone that war is always noisy, messy, and gloriously unpredictable. The score that nearly never was. Music became the production's strangest battlefield. Legendary composer Lalo Schifrin signed on first, crafting an ominous, percussive score, echoing his Dirty Harry intensity. Producers feared it was too dark for a Christmas release and demanded something nobler. Furious, Schifrin walked. Enter Michel Legrand, fresh from the umbrellas of Cherbourg, who rewrote everything in 4 frantic weeks. His version fused brass fanfares with wistful strings, half war anthem, half elegy. Musicians thought it felt too romantic for Nazis. Yet, the juxtaposition worked. The score added melancholy grace to scenes of duty and loss. Years later, Schifrin's unused tracks leaked, revealing what the movie might have been. Jagged rhythms and dread, rather than nostalgia. Two brilliant composers. Two opposite tones, one film balanced between them. It wasn't just a soundtrack swap. It was a philosophical argument over how war should sound, triumphant or tragic. In choosing Legrand, The Eagle Has Landed chose heart over hardness. Hidden political reactions. When The Eagle Has Landed premiered, audiences didn't just debate performances, they debated ethics. Some British veterans loved its realism. Others condemned it for making Nazis look noble. American critics, still scarred by Vietnam, saw reflections of soldiers obeying flawed orders. Letters flooded newspapers accusing producers of moral relativism. Meanwhile, in West Germany, the film was quietly praised for portraying Wehrmacht soldiers with dignity instead of fanaticism. The controversy forced Paramount to adjust marketing. Posters shifted emphasis from the German mission to the Allied counterstrike. Oddly, that campaign drew bigger crowds. The film became both patriotic and anti-war depending on who watched it. Coppola had his Apocalypse Now. Sturgis stumbled into his own psychological battlefield. It wasn't propaganda. It was perspective unchained. Proof that one story can mirror different nations' conscience. The Weirdness, a straightforward adventure, ended up teaching diplomacy through discomfort, reminding everyone that history never speaks with one voice. A novel-to-film continuity paradox. Adaptations usually trim details. This one rewrote destiny. In Jack Higgins's best-selling novel, Irish agent Liam Devlin survives, escaping disguised as a priest and resurfacing in later books. But test audiences laughed at his improbable getaway, calling it too lucky for war. Sturgis ordered a new ending. Devlin dies beside Steiner, buying time with sacrifice. It made emotional sense, but it shattered continuity when Higgins revived Devlin in The Eagle Has Flown and sequels. Readers saw him alive. Filmgoers saw him dead. The contradiction still sparks fan debates about which version counts. Some theorize the book Devlin faked his death. Others say the movie depicts an alternate timeline. Even Higgins joked, "The cinema killed him. I resurrected him." It wasn't just artistic liberty. It was myth splintering into multiverse decades before Hollywood made that term fashionable. The Eagle Has Landed didn't end its story. It multiplied it, proving fiction always finds another escape route. Nearly 50 years later, The Eagle Has Landed still feels like an anomaly, half-war saga, half-cinematic accident that somehow flew. Every decision, mishap, and coincidence stitched its weird charm. From silent feuds to barking dogs and real soldiers staging fake landings, the film lived its own alternate history behind the camera. If these secrets grounded your curiosity, hit like, subscribe, and stay alert. Because in filmmaking, just like in wartime, no plan survives first contact with reality.